All right, this is the Battle of Ohio podcast weekly prediction segment. We're putting this segment into its own video now because it's starting to take up so much room on the podcast, and we're actually having a lot of fun with it. So we don't want to cut it out. We want to keep doing it, but we're putting it in its own separate video. So those of you who want to watch it, those of you who want to get involved and want to have fun with us in this part of the podcast can. And if you don't want to, you can just have that you can have the much more condensed version of the podcast and listen to us talk about the Bengals and Browns instead of every single team in the NFL. So, like I said, this is the first week that we're going to be doing this. We already did the predictions themselves on the previous podcast, but this is going to be the recap of Week 9 in the NFL. So basically, what has happened this week is I'm continuing to trail Thomas, although I am not doing quite so bad after my really rough start to the year. Right now, Thomas is 26-14 on the year. I'm 19-21, and that is after this week. Thomas went 9-5 on the week, and I went 7-7. So I broke even, but Thomas actually did pretty well. Um,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool.
So the
Cool.
teams that we got wrong, we both expected the Colts to beat the Ravens, and while I think they definitely showed throughout the game that that was a thing that could have potentially happened, in at least in the first half, and they kind of fell apart in the second half, but that is not what ended up happening. The Ravens took down the Indianapolis Colts. We both thought that the Seattle Seahawks would beat the Buffalo Bills, and that definitely did not happen. The Bills crushed them. I think this is proof that Russell Wilson. If anything, I think this is more fuel to the Russell Wilson MVP fire because clearly, if he isn't on his A game, the Seahawks are not a contender. Um,
I think that game proves that I think that game proves two theories. One, the AFC is just far and beyond better than the NFC. Not even close right now. The AFC is just a different league than the NFC is right now. It just is. Because the Seahawks has been considered as one of the best teams in the NFC, and the Bills aren't even in the same discussion as the Steelers and Chiefs.
right.
Um, Not saying the Bills aren't good, because the Bills are obviously a good team. It's just that it just shows you how good the AFC is. And it shows you how good the AFC is. Just there's so many good teams in the AFC. It's going to be so competitive in the AFC, especially on the top. Uh, the Seahawks have no defense, and they're able to eat through those NFC teams. So this is
Yeah.
quite alarming in a lot of ways. So, like you said, Russell Wilson is definitely MVP,
Yeah.
but
Well,
there's a lot
Russell
of alarming
Wilson,
things.
when I say most valuable player, I don't necessarily mean he's the best player in the league. I mean he is the most valuable to his team because I
Yeah,
feel like the Packers are a good enough team all around, where if they had a slightly less good quarterback, they would still be pretty competitive. I mean, obviously, if you stick like Blake Bortles on the Packers, they're going to start struggling. But if you stick like I don't know if you stick like 2016 Andy Dalton onto the Packers, then they're probably still doing pretty well. If you stick Baker Mayfield onto the Packers, they're probably still doing pretty well. If you stick Josh
yeah,
Allen, most quarterbacks in the league, except for the really bottom of the barrel, if you stick them on the Packers, they're probably doing pretty well. But if you stick anybody but Russell Wilson on the Seahawks, um, week to week, when he's able to tear it up, they win. And when he even has a slightly less than amazing game, they don't have a chance because that Seattle defense is awful. And actually, as a quick note to the Bengals fans listening to this podcast, that Seattle defense actually did get a decent boost from Carlos Dunlap. He played pretty well. He got 5 tackles. He got in the backfield for a sack. He got 3 tackles for losses, and he got 2 quarterback hits. He actually made a pretty significant impact on this team, and they still gave up 44 points. So, Dunlap, like I said before, I have no beef with him. I'm, glad he is getting to a place where there's a potential Super Bowl contender. But he might have actually downgraded a defense with how bad the Seahawks look right now.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, man. I mean, they gotta do better than that, man. I mean, like they gotta like if the Seahawks want to get another championship, if Wilson want to get another championship, he's going to need a better defense than that. And I don't know if they can fix that this year.
Yeah.
Uh, man, they're just not doing. They just cannot stop the Bills. Now that's not discrediting Josh Allen, who actually looked really good this year. I mean, 415 yards. Stephon Diggs is leading the NFL in receiving yards, which is where did that come from? Stephon Diggs, y'all. Like
Well,
just
Stephon Diggs was a good receiver, but I don't think anybody really expected him to make this much of an impact right away.
he was a good receiver. He was always a good receiver, but he was never considered elite. And he's playing at elite level.
Depends on who you ask.
Uh,
If you ask Vikings fans, they would have said he was elite.
I thought Dylan was better for the longest. I thought Dylan was just because Dylan. I thought Dylan was just more consistent, and I just thought Adam Dylan was Mr. Reliable.
Well, he
You
was
know,
definitely more consistent, but I mean that'd be like saying that Tyler Boyd is better than AJ Green. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
definitely not accurate. But right
yeah,
now, Tyler Boyd looks better than AJ Green because he's consistent. He's going out there, making great catches all the time. But AJ Green is still like the talent that guy has in his body. The amount of talent that AJ Green has in like his left arm is probably more than Tyler Boyd has in his whole body. It's just about getting it down and utilizing it. I think for Diggs, it's a mental thing. When he gets knocked off of his mental focus and whatnot, he can kind of he can slump a little bit. And Adam
yeah,
Thielen is used to dealing with adversity, and um, he very rarely at the time had down games. So. But I would not agree to say that Thielen was actually better than Diggs. It's just you're right though. He was more consistent.
I don't know. Sometimes explosiveness, and those great eye popping plays, yeah. But I mean, receivers are you need your receiver to catch the ball, and I need a receiver to get open, and I could rely on Adam Thielen to be open every single time I look his way.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting debate. Right now, Stephon Diggs is definitely better, but I don't know. I don't know. There's some days where I felt like the Vikings. I don't know. Because it's obvious when you take Stephon Diggs off the Vikings, I'm feeling don't look as valuable as he did with Diggs. So obviously, he needed Diggs more than Diggs needed him.
Yeah.
So but Josh Allen looks good for sure. Josh Allen looks really good. Josh Allen is just 415 passing yards against that terrible defense. That'll take away from his accomplishment. Um, just just eating, just eating. Currently he had for the season he has a 68% completion rating, 2,587 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions on the year. Josh Allen is just looking really good right now. Like there's just no denying how good this kid looks right now. So I gotta give it to him.
There are a lot of people out there who, in particular, people I talk to, and people are probably going to hear this podcast and hit me up after and be like, yeah, you're an idiot. But I know a lot of people who are Josh Allen doubters, and they're going to continue doubting him even through a game like this because there have been some off games, and in fairness, he does run a fairly simplistic style of offense, but it's just the amount of talent that guy has. If you can really, if you can have an offensive coordinator who can find a way to harness that ability, then you get games like this where Josh Allen is just going to tear the other team up, and unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Unfortunately for the Bills, it doesn't happen every week, and because of that, um, you can't really count on them in any given week. But when he does go off, he's exciting,
Yeah,
and
you
everybody.
you had a. At first, I question, can the Bills beat big time opponents? And in reality, they have. They beat Seattle. Um, even though New England is not New England anymore, they still got the mental shadow of New England. They beat them. The only two teams they lost to was Kansas City and Tennessee, and everybody loses those two teams. But even
Mhm.
still, Tennessee was a blowout, but they played Kansas City tough, and they beat Los Angeles, they beat Las Vegas, they beat some pretty decent teams. They're going the right direction, and Seattle was just another big win for them. And watch out for the Bills in the playoffs, guys, because they can make some noise.
They
So who
certainly
knows? Because these young teams, these young quarterbacks, they're not finished products. They're growing. You know, they're all growing. They could just get better as the season goes on. I got nothing negative to say about the Bills.
another team that I I have absolutely no clue how to address. Like week to week, I can't figure out what's going on with them. Is the Atlanta Falcons like? Are they competitive? Are they good? Are they like historically awful? I don't know. I know they're 3-6, um, and a lot of these losses have just been absolutely ridiculously insane losses. Um, but uh, they pulled it off against against a scrappy Broncos team this week, uh,
Mhm.
and neither of us picked that to happen. That was another one that we both got wrong.
Well, let me say this though. Drew Luck played a really good game, and I got plenty of fantasy points from him. He had more fantasy points than Lamar Jackson did, who my opponent had. My opponent had Lamar Jackson. Drew Luck outperformed Lamar Jackson. So thank you, Drew Luck.
Well, you know what? I got something similar to say when I address another game that was definitely on the, at least for me, was on the L chart. But we'll talk about that here in a second. The Minnesota Vikings taking down the Detroit Lions in Minnesota. I think we both picked the Lions to win this game because the Lions have been kind of on a hot streak lately, and the Vikings have really, really not been. But I'll tell you who is on a hot streak, and that's Dalvin Cook.
Evan Cook, my
Um,
God,
that,
my
that, that, that
God.
dude is going off, and he might be the first running back in MVP consideration.
Since like probably like
I
David
can't remember the
Thomas.
last time. I mean, I know Adrian Peterson, another Vikings
Oh
running back,
yeah,
was the last one
well
to win
yeah.
it. I can't remember when the last time, if that was the last time that a running back was in consideration. Like people are seriously talking about Dalvin Cook. I mean, like if the Vikings rattle off some more wins and Dalvin Cook keeps up this pace, if they make the playoffs, behind Dalvin Cook, then there's a real chance that Dalvin Cook could steal the MVP race away from Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or one of those quarterbacks who's having a really good year.
You know the great thing about Dalvin Cook though, that I'm liking, and you starting to see a trend, is the running attack is coming back. That rhymes. Running,
Yeah.
people, you know how the NFL has been this passing league for the last 5, 6 years. Everybody glamour about passing, but it seems that running backs are still in the back of the spotlight. I love what Delvin Cook is doing. Keep
Mhm.
eating, bruh. Keep eating, bruh. He is so good, so fun to watch, so athletic, so fast, so just
Well, I think
oh,
the big thing with running backs has been um, the issue that the reason people keep discounting their importance is because a lot of these running backs, when they get these giant contracts, they're not performing up to the standards that, excuse me, is they're not performing to the standards set by um,
well, you know,
they're
it's
not
hard to be a
performing
good
up to
run.
the sorry,
Go,
man.
no, go for it.
Brain completely turned off. They're not performing up to the standards set by the numbers in the contract that they signed.
Uh,
So like I mean, a lot of people are talking about with the Bengals this year. You got Joe Mixon who signed this fairly large contract, and he's been looking really good when he's on the field, but he's not always on the
uh,
field. And even then, it's like, how much impact is the running back really making, especially when you've got Joe Burrow, who's just doing these amazing things through the air. And when you hand the ball to Joe Mixon, that's a play that Joe Burrow's not throwing it.
yeah,
And with how effective passing offenses have been, that's why a lot of people are saying running backs don't matter. And
yeah,
it isn't that running backs don't matter, because obviously the Vikings are playing an old school style of football right now because they got Kirk Cousins as their quarterback and they got Mike Zimmer, who's a very defensive, like ground and pound type coach,
Yeah.
or pound him like grind him into the dust type coach, um, who you can see really wanting to use like an old school kind of you know slog your way through a football game type mentality. Um, the thing with Joe Mixon is there's actually a lot of talk about him potentially losing some of his snaps because of how good Giovanni Bernard's been in there, and it's not so much because he's putting up amazing point or amazing stats or amazing fantasy points or like getting a bunch of touchdowns in whatever. But what he is doing is when he's on the field, he basically acts as like an extra set of eyes for Joe Burrow, an extra guy blocking in the pass game. An extra guy being able to do et cetera, et cetera. And, he can also potentially catch out of the backfield, but he's bringing a lot of value um, in experience as a member of the passing game. And that's what I think. That's where I think running backs, if they want to have value in the NFL, they're going to have to, it's partly about being, a really tough, hard nosed guy who can get yards, tough yards for the team. But it's also going to be about, having to adapt to the way things are now. And just, some running backs are struggling to do that. Dalvin Cook is an example of a running back who is maybe not doing the best at that, but holy cow, is he making up for it in other ways?
Yeah, he's balling. He is straight out balling.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
with a capital B. All respect. Shout out to Dalvin Cook, y'all.
So another game that we both got wrong was the Sunday night football game between where the New Orleans Saints traveled to Tampa Bay to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we were both on this podcast like, we looked kind of silly. We're like, Tom Brady, man, he's looking so great. He's going to, turn around. He's not going to lose to the Saints twice. He's going to look much better this week and blah, 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 blah. Well, that didn't happen. Tom Brady looked
Yeah,
old.
I wouldn't even say he had a bad game, but like can we just talk about like how good the Saints were? They just effed them up,
Well,
man. They just
right.
they was just like, you ever see that SpongeBob meme? How many times do I gotta teach you, old man? Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did, man. Drew
Well, I
Brees.
will say for the people who were tearing down the Buccaneers for being exposed by the New Orleans Saints, it's like yes, the Saints have now swept the Buccaneers this year, and they're clearly, at least from a head-to-head perspective, the better team. If they meet in the playoffs, then and we do this prediction segment, I'll most likely be picking the Saints because until you prove otherwise, Buccaneers, I can't trust that. But what I will say is the Saints and the Buccaneers both have the same number of wins this year. Now the Buccaneers haven't had their bye week yet, but still the Saints and Buccaneers have the same number of wins this year, despite the Saints sweeping the Bucks.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that leads me to believe that maybe we shouldn't like put too much like panic about like what's going on with the Buccaneers into the fact that they got swept by the Saints because other than that they're performing extremely well. They are outside of games with the Saints. They are 6-1 this year, so that's
Yeah,
that's that's pretty good.
it's important to realize like something bigger, a bigger thing though too is we're seeing uh Drew Brees versus Tom Brady. Like that, like they
Mhm.
got the two of them take that matchup seriously because I'm here looking at this. You realize that Drew Brees and Tom Brady faced each other in 1999 in college, Michigan versus Purdue. Like,
I did not know that they played in college.
yeah, there's actually with a very good video about it. Tom Brady won, obviously,
Mhm.
but it's just looking over the years of like the Saints versus the Patriots, or the San Diego Chargers versus the Patriots. Forget that Drew Brees played for the Chargers before he played for the Saints,
Mhm.
and just how they just went back and forth and how they're battling to beat each other's records right now. It is just very fascinating to see these two quarterbacks go against each other for Tom Brady has been widely accepted as the best quarterback ever. And Drew Brees says, "Hey, look, I deserve a seat in that discussion." And that's the funnest thing about watching these two play each other. And that's probably why the Saints blew them out so much because Drew Brees trying to say, hey, I deserve a seat at the table as greatest quarterback ever. Where's my attention for the greatest quarterback ever?
We see my
And
my perspective on that is that's fair. Drew Brees has played very well, but it's kind of like when people were talking about Joe Flacco as elite back in the day. Like, how many
yeah.
elite quarterbacks, how many GOAT discussion quarterbacks can you have playing at the same time?
Well, I
Like,
mean, well,
okay,
maybe
so like Tom Brady, you got Aaron Rodgers, you got Drew Brees. That's three quarterbacks in the NFL. That's nearly 10% of the league, of the league starting quarterbacks,
yeah.
and maybe up to 10% depending on being able to call certain guys who don't keep their job all year starting quarterbacks. But is 10% of the current league really the greatest quarterbacks of all time? I don't know. Like, there's stats, and guys like Drew Brees have the stats, but is that really a product of the way that the game works today, or is that a product of these guys just being transcendently great, and we just happen to have three of the greatest of all time playing the last 10 years?
I think I think that we are in an era where we're looking at we had a chance, like, you think about it, I think we are in an era where we just witnessed some of the greatest quarterbacks that we're ever gonna see. And now we got Patrick
And Joe Burrow.
Mahomes. So yeah, so we got yeah, well, yeah. Uh just watching I guess people always clamor for the current thing. I don't think that personally, I don't think that Drew Brees is greater than Tom Brady. I think that he deserves, like I said, I think that he deserves a seat at the discussion. I think you cannot ignore some of the things that Drew Brees has done. You cannot ignore the records that he's broke.
Right.
But considering the fact that we have that Drew Brees and Tom Brady are breaking records that have not been broken in 100 years, I think that deserves to that deserve to give them some credibility. Like you said, we are playing a different game. Like Otto Graham was the greatest quarterback of his time, but Otto Graham he didn't throw as much as quarterbacks today do.
Yeah.
But he was a great passer, but he didn't. But the thing is that the game that Otto Graham played was a lot different than the game that we see today. It's almost like it's a completely different football game.
Hmm.
So like you said, so it is. So it's a little bit of both, but you can't ignore the fact that in 2010, we had Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Brett
Yeah,
Favre,
Peyton Manning, that's the other one. Yeah.
all playing at once.
Right.
All playing at once.
But
you know,
that is kind of my point. It's just kind of like,
we kind of
like
we
if
grew
you,
up. I
if you
think
if you
we're in the
add
golden
in
age of
Peyton
quarterbacks.
Manning, then you've got four quarterbacks who are all, arguably in the GOAT discussion playing at the
Yeah,
same time. And that just
exactly.
like you can't have four goats. You can only have one. So how are they? How it doesn't make any sense to me that you're
It
gonna
means that we
have
grew up in the
all
golden era
four
of
of those
quarterbacks.
guys in the discussion. I think Tom Brady is in that discussion. I think maybe 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 you could put Aaron Rodgers in there. You could definitely put Peyton Manning in there. Um, but I don't know, Drew Brees. I think he's definitely the greatest New Orleans Saints quarterback of all time. I think he's definitely a Hall of Famer. I think et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in the GOAT discussion, I don't know. There's been a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't see that there's four playing at the same time.
I think that I just think that we just grew up in a golden era quarterback. I agree with you that Aaron Rodgers. I would not put Aaron Rodgers in that discussion because I think Aaron Rodgers he has a tendency of choking. But I think
Well,
what we've seen is that we kind of seen so many great quarterbacks that they're actually beating each other for the championships. So,
mhm.
but what happens when we start to see Peyton Manning retires? What happens when you start to see when Drew Brees starts to get older, Brett Favre get out of the league, right? Tom Brady starts to win more championships because those quarterbacks are gone. So I
Mhm.
think that I think we had so many great in the 2000s and the early 2010s. We had so many great quarterbacks. We had we had 4 or 5 great quarterbacks in this league that were so far and beyond better than anything that we have seen in a very long time that they kind of overshadowed every other quarterback in the league. Now you see
Well,
more parity in quarterbacks, but I just think that yeah, it was a I think we grew up in the golden era of quarterbacks. I think we literally grew up in the golden era of quarterbacks. I think we're currently entering a second golden era of quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes and boys. But
Yeah.
man, like I don't know, man. It's an interesting discussion, but I don't know. Because because soon they're gonna be like, oh, Lamar Jackson best ever, or Patrick Mahomes best ever, who I think will be the best ever in 10 years.
Real quick on what you were saying, I just want to butt in a little bit. I'll let you finish, but you actually made a good point about Aaron Rodgers. I think now that you mentioned, I think I probably would take him out of the GOAT discussion because I think he has some things that he does that are better than I've ever seen ever done before. In particular, his accuracy.
Yeah.
Before Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if I've ever seen a quarterback who, and even during most of Aaron Rodgers' career, I don't know if I've ever seen a quarterback who was just as accurate and on the ball every single time he threw the ball. But you're also right. I don't know if he's got great leadership, but I don't know if he has goat leadership. He has great ability to win games, but I don't know if he has goat ability to win games. He's like he's a surefire Hall of Famer, and he's definitely, I think, top 10 all time. But I don't think I would put him in the GOAT discussion. Now that you mentioned that, so it's basically of our time. I think it's Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning, and I think that's it.
Yeah. I think that it's important to decipher the difference between talent and greatness, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times because there's so much more in a quarterback position than talent. Personally, I think that I used to always say this. I remember I used to go to the Browns training camp. I go to Browns training camp every year, and I went
Mm-hmm.
the year that Johnny Manziel was there, and Brian Hoyer was a better quarterback than Johnny Manziel, no doubt. But Johnny Manziel could do some things. He could make some throws that Brian Hoyer would even try. Like Johnny Manziel, the reason why Johnny Manziel, keep in mind, Johnny Manziel beat Alabama. Johnny Manziel had just pure talent. And that's why he was able to get away with what he did. Because you get away with that in college. You get away with not prepping. You can get away with not studying your opponent. You get away with not reading defense. If you have a lot of talent in college, you can do you can do whatever you want, right? You can do whatever you want. Look at Marcus Russell. He fooled everybody in thinking that he was the number one pick because he didn't have, it wasn't the fact that he didn't have talent. It was that he didn't prep. He didn't study. He didn't take being a quarterback seriously. Same thing with Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel, like, go back and watch his college tapes, dude. That kid have talent. That kid had a good arm. That kid was fairly accurate, and he made some throws. Like I remember just watching him make these throws. Like, dang, that's a pretty nice. That's a very precise throw. Like he had this sidearm throw, and he, for example, and like every quarterback in the NFL can pretty much sidearm, but his sidearm throw. I'm trying to remember who was the quarterback. Who it was an older quarterback that came to the Browns, and he was showing the older quarterback that sidearm throw. I can't remember his name. Josh McCown. That's who it was. Josh McCown came to the Browns, and Johnny Manziel was in training camp one day. He was showing him his sidearm. Like, oh yeah, look, I can throw it to the side like this. And then he's like, "Oh, how you do that?" I was like, "Well, so like, how did you start doing that?" He's like, "Oh, when defenders come my way, basically when defenders would come his way, right? And he would have, he's only 6 foot tall, and he would have this big ass linebacker. He would just get a good enough angle to him, and then he would just kind of like lean over and just like throw it on his side. Like it was very unique how he did it, but it was just so natural to him. He just like like just like this, like a flick of the wrist. And like most quarterbacks in the NFL could probably do it, but I mean, like he could just do it consistently, like it was nothing. And he could throw the ball like so hard, so far, just by doing that, like that, just like that little just throw. And that's just things that you don't think that quarterbacks could do, or like like some of the things that Lamar Jackson could do, right? And I don't mean that they're the greatest quarterback ever, because there's more to quarterbacking than just different ways to get over 300 pounds, 6'5" linebacker that's come back at you. There's a lot more to it. And the problem wasn't talent, it was the fact that they don't study the tape. They don't read defenses. They don't lead men. And there's so much to go into a quarterback. Same thing when we get into discussion of being the greatest quarterback ever. When I think that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever, I think about his leadership. I think about his preparation. I think about his hard work. I think about his dedication. This man is doing whatever he can to stay in the league right now. He's going to his mid 40s. He's still playing football. Even though it's just quarterback, he's still playing football in his 40s.
Not only
And
that, but he's playing extremely well most of the time. I mean, he didn't play all that
exactly.
well this past week, but I mean, as far as his season as a whole is considered, I'd say this is definitely a season that's going to go into the like when I mean he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer no matter what he does.
Yeah.
But they're going to talk about this season as an example of why he is a Hall of Famer.
So this is why. So I would definitely put Tom Brady at the top of the GOAT list, and Drew Brees get a lot of that credit too, because Drew Brees did win a championship in New Orleans. He only won one, and that's the thing that's holding him back. If he won two or three more championships, Drew Brees would be in that discussion, right, with Tom Brady. The problem was Tom Brady had some things that Drew Brees didn't have. Tom Brady had the whole pedigree of New England. He had those coaches, not just oh dang, how did I forget his name already? How did I forget his coach in New England? I'm
Bill
sorry, I
Belichick.
just blinked. Yeah, okay, sorry. Not only did he have Bill Belichick, I don't know how I forgot Bill Belichick, but not only did he have Bill Belichick, but he had McDaniels, he had these special team coaches, he had these defenses, these he had these running backs. Actually, he didn't have a lot of weapons on offense, honestly. But when you look at his defense, when you look at what he had around him to help him win championships, these are things that Drew Brees didn't have. Drew Brees went 8-8 for 3 years straight. So there's only so much a quarterback can do, but at the same time, there's so much a quarterback has to do. And these two guys done it better than almost anybody else in the history of the NFL. So I do think that Drew Brees deserves a seat at the table for greatest quarterbacks of all time. Is he better? If he better than Tom Brady? No, but Drew Brees is definitely in this discussion as well as Peyton Manning, in my personal opinion.
Mm, fair enough. I think Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer, but I don't think Drew Brees is in the GOAT discussion myself. But you know who is not in the GOAT discussion? At least as far as greatest quarterback of all time, maybe greatest mustache of all time. And I might have just given it away. Garner
Are you talking
Minshew.
about?
Gardner
Okay, yeah,
Minshew.
that's what I thought you just
Gardner
said. Yeah,
Minshew.
that's what I thought.
This is
Yeah.
another game that we both got. Oh wait, no, I'm wrong. This is a game that I got wrong and you got right.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
really?
you picked the Texans to win this game. I picked the Jaguars to win this game, and
Yeah, I did.
I am starting to lose any faith that I had in the Jaguars. Now I know
You have faith in the
come at
Jaguars?
me for having faith in the Jaguars, but I mean they haven't been an absolutely horrible team at all points this year. There was a point where it was looking like they might go on a run, and then they just completely collapsed. I think like they played the Colts early on. They played the Colts well. They got another. Was it the Chargers that they beat? They beat someone early on, and they had two relatively close games, and it was looking like the Jaguars. Everybody was like, "Oh, we thought the Jaguars were going to tank for Trevor this year," and then now it clearly looks like that's not happening. But then now they're 1-7 now, so it's just kind of like maybe they are tanking for Trevor. I don't know. But
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew probably not sticking around too much longer in Jacksonville after this, unfortunately for him. Deshaun Watson most likely sticking around in Houston if he decides to do so. But
Deshaun
I
Watson's a good
don't know.
quarterback.
That's such a terrible situation. I wouldn't blame him at all for moving on. Even
Yeah,
though
me neither.
he's pretty much the Texans' last hope for any relevancy right now.
Dak Prescott, Texan 2021. Why don't you switch
But
quarterbacks? Like the
well,
Cowboys can have Watson, and the Texans can have Prescott. Who would say no, right? I
when
don't
is
know.
Deshaun
Probably both.
Watson's contract up?
I don't know.
Like you think they're gonna trade him to the Cowboys? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, No, that was just I just threw that out there, honestly. Like, I just thinking, like, what if, like, I was thinking a hypothetical scenario. What if the Texans and the Cowboys switch quarterbacks? And,
Well,
like, I'm just,
it would have to require a trade because it looks like Deshaun Watson is locked up in Houston
for
through
a
at
while, yeah,
least
he signed a contract.
2023, and
Yeah,
his contract's through 2025. But
yeah.
2023 is when they could potentially like cut him loose if it isn't working out.
Well,
But
I
I
guess
don't know if
it'll
they
make
would.
sense. It'll make sense money wise because they can say, oh well, this guy's already under contract. We already know what his contract is, so we could work around that, and we know how much heat we'll owe him for the next 5 years, opposed to Prescott, where we got to figure out how much we're going to pay him. Texans will get away with somebody, get rid of somebody who has a contract, who have, like, not contract issue, but issues with the organization as a whole. And then,
Well,
and then they could get somebody like Dak Prescott, who is just a beast.
and maybe trying to trade for him, but other than that's the only way that the and Bill O'Brien's gone, so I don't know if they're
Yeah,
going to
that's
make
true.
that make that happen. But yeah, like I said, the Texans beat the Jaguars 27-25. It was actually a pretty close game, so I'm not insane for having picked the Jaguars to win this game. Looks like they were pretty
Oh no.
competitive. They were actually they scored first, uh, then Houston tied it. Houston went up and never looks like they never lost the lead at that point. There were a couple of times like the Jaguars kept it close the whole game, and they actually tied it up. Um, looks like in the second quarter. But after the second quarter, the Texans held on to a 4 point lead that they turned into a pretty substantial lead after that. And the Jaguars kind of came back at the end, but not really fast enough to really give them a realistic chance of actually pulling off the win. So you could maybe call it garbage time, but I just want to say I wasn't crazy to think that the Jaguars have a chance to win that game. The
Oh no,
Jaguars
not at
are,
all.
I think that the Jaguars' problem is not a lack of talent all the time or lack of pieces to win games. It's just they have a complete, uh, what would you call it, inability to they aren't a cohesive team. They aren't. They have a lot of pieces, but they don't have a lot of cohesion. Like,
Yeah.
and that's an indictment on the coaching staff, which is a shame because I really like Doug Marrone. You know, I liked him in Buffalo, and I thought he was a pretty good pickup for Jacksonville. But that right there is a perfect indictment of the coaching staff. It's like the Jaguars do have the pieces to be more competitive than they are. Maybe not like a playoff team, but definitely more competitive than they are, and they're just not doing it. Um,
Yeah.
so
No,
I
the
think we'll
Jaguars
probably be
got a lot of
waving
issues.
goodbye to Doug Marrone here pretty soon.
Yeah, Jaguars got a lot of issues, and they were so good a couple years ago. Well,
Yep.
Blake Bortles are all people too. It's just, yeah, they gotta pretty much restart. They gotta pretty
Actually,
much restart.
the I've gotten a lot of things right and a lot of things wrong when it comes to the NFL draft so far, but I will go ahead and be very open and honest about this. I thought Blake Bortles was going to be like the next big thing in the NFL, and I was actually Blaine Gabbert too. Actually, I actually wanted the Bengals to draft Blaine Gabbert in 2011, and I was mad when we got AJ Green and then picked up Andy Dalton in the second round, which goes to show you how much I know.
I was a
But
big
Blake
Colt McCoy
Bortles, I was
fan.
convinced Blake Bortles was going to be a great quarterback, and I think both him and Gabbert. I think a big part of their problem was the Jaguars just did not develop either of them properly, and because I mean you've seen both Gabbert and Bortles have flashed as backups with other teams.
Uh,
They just and they flashed talent when they were in Jacksonville. It just never developed into anything, and I think a lot of that I think that's an indictment on the Jaguars as a franchise because I mean they did the same thing with what's his name, the other guy that they drafted in the first round back in like 2008. Was it David Garrard or Byron Leftwich? Which one was more recent?
I'm not sure actually.
Probably Byron Leftwich.
Yeah.
Let's see. Byron Leftwich was the first. Yes, so 2003. That was a long time ago. But he was the seventh overall pick by the Jaguars, and he was pretty good. But I think injuries and a complete lack of development kind of pretty much caused him to not develop into what he really could have been. And now he's Tom Brady's offensive coordinator, so I guess that kind of worked out for him. But anyway, enough about the Jaguars because I got a little bit to say about this next game. Um, and the final game that either of us got wrong, once again, it was me. Because this is another one of those weeks where Thomas did not get any games wrong that I didn't also get wrong. So there were two games that I got wrong that Thomas got right, but there were no games that Thomas got wrong that I got right. And that is my problem every week. I'm not doing too bad. I just, the ones that I get wrong just happen to be the ones I disagree with Thomas on. So
Yeah.
maybe I should stop
Feels
disagreeing.
good to be me.
Yeah.
But watch it. As soon as you start agreeing with me, you better go on a losing streak. Like, just
yeah. You know what? Maybe I should do that just to sabotage your record.
No,
If I'm gonna suck, then we both gotta suck. What?
I just go with my instinct, honestly. Like I just don't second guess myself. I just go like my
well,
first
I'm going
thought.
with my instinct too. Maybe my instinct is just maybe I overthink my instinct. I don't know, but I'm not I'm not overly analyzing every single one of these games. I'm just like, man, I think the Jaguars could get this one. Man, I think the Bengals could get this one. Man, I think the Browns could get this one. Do what?
Yeah, I just go with my first thought. Like but also like it kind of I'm also kind of like
Okay.
I say some crazy things. I just told the Texans to trade Deshaun Watson for Dak Prescott. Yo, what if that actually happened? How funny would that be?
That would not happen.
I know it would never happen. It would never happen. I am not saying it will happen, nor am I saying it should happen. I'm just saying I don't know why I said it. Honestly, I just kind of just pulled out of my ass.
Well,
like,
I
hey,
mean,
what is this?
there's nothing wrong with saying it. Go ahead. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about this Dolphins Cardinals game. You want to talk about something that is crazy? Is how damn good the Miami Dolphins are after whatever that was last season. Like they're and it's not because they drafted Tua Tagovailoa. He's played kind of up and down pretty decently. But a lot, I mean, they were winning before he got there with Ryan Fitzpatrick. What it is it's the defense. And I know Brian Flores is a defensive coach and in some cases a defensive mastermind, but still, I mean, that defense was so bad last year.
Well, not only that,
I don't know
Brian
what
Flores
happened. Like,
not only that, he plays. He's a competent coach though. Like they was competent last year. They was winning some games that they didn't look bad. I mean, they didn't look horrible last year. I mean, like
tell you what game they didn't win though was the Tank Bowl, and I guess they did win that game, but they didn't win the prize.
Tank, yeah, exactly.
They didn't win the tank. My Bengals won that tank, and we got Joe Burrow, who, as much as Tua looks fine, I think he's going to be good. I actually, before Joe Burrow broke out, Tua Tagovailoa was the quarterback that I wanted the Bengals to draft with their high pick. However, I think now, regardless of how good Tua is playing, I think it is obvious that we made an amazing pick with Joe Burrow. And I am so glad that we lost to the Dolphins last year, and I can't wait to beat them this year.
Yeah, Tua looks good, though. Tua look good, Tua look actually really good. He 24-28, 2 touchdowns, 35 yards on the ground. That play that he got out of pressure was great. Man, that kid's going to be special.
Yeah. You know who else looked really good? And
the Dolphins are going to take that division in a couple years.
Yeah. But you know who else looked really good and is also probably going to be super special in the NFL. We actually he's already been in it for a little while, so we already know he's going to be pretty special. But Kyler Murray, man, like even in a loss, Kyler Murray was going off the rails, and he's my fantasy quarterback. And I had a sure, absolute, definite loss coming this week. And here
Kyler
comes
Murray.
Kyler Murray with 45 fantasy points to lift me out of the gates of oblivion into a somehow win and maintaining my second seed for the upcoming playoffs. This guy had, uh, wow, he only had 283 passing yards.
But
But he had
he had
three
100 rushing
passing.
yards.
Yeah, well, he had 100 rushing yards. He had three passing touchdowns and a quarterback rating of 150.
Yeah.
So that's not perfect, but that's pretty damn near perfect. He took a sack for 19 yards. Holy hell! Wow. Okay, so that definitely doesn't help him. But he went 21 of 26 on the game, um, three passing touchdowns, one rushing touchdown, and total of looks like about 389 all-purpose yards. So I mean, he was the Arizona Cardinals this week, uh, and
He
going up
was
against
Arizona.
that stout Miami defense too. Like Miami has a really good defense, but they could not find an answer for Kyler Murray. They happened to. I actually believe the Cardinals missed a field goal at the end. What was it like? It was like a 48 yarder, and it was short. It
Yeah.
wasn't even like the wrong direction. It was just short.
I
Um,
know an indoor stadium for that. Like, come on, y'all.
yeah,
Like
that game would have been going to overtime had it not been for that. And who knows what happens at that point because that basically resets the whole game.
Kyler Murray is
And with the
electric,
way
man.
Kyler Murray was playing at the time, I wouldn't have been terribly shocked to see. I wouldn't have been terribly shocked to see the Cardinals come away with the win. So there's another example of yes, I got this game wrong. Yes, I got the Jaguars game wrong, but it was definitely a winnable game for both teams in both cases. So I don't feel too. I consider this more being like kind of an unlucky break for me in this particular
Yeah.
case because I thought the Jaguars absolutely had what it took to win. I thought the Cardinals absolutely had what it took to win. They definitely both did. It just didn't work out this week.
Oh yeah, no, the Dolphins are gonna come back down to earth in a minute. They're hot right now, but I think they're gonna. They had some impressive wins. The AFC NFC thing though, like seriously, like I'm gonna stick by that for a while because it is working for me. But the uh the Dolphins, they look good. They got an adult in the room. There's still some problems there though. There's still a lot of problems. Oh, they got the Chargers next week. Okay, that's a W. They got
yeah,
the Broncos. Okay, that's another W. Okay, they got
yeah,
the
they
Jets.
got a
Okay,
pretty
that's
easy schedule.
dang. Yeah, no,
I think
that's not
actually,
good. That's not good for
I
us.
yeah, I actually looked at the well, I mean, obviously I looked at them, been following them all year, but I've been looking at the Bengals' upcoming schedule, and I actually think the Dolphins might be our biggest challenge left on the schedule because like I think if we can put together the team for a whole game, I don't see any reason why we couldn't beat the Ravens. Um,
Well, I need y'all to beat the Dolphins because y'all beat the Dolphins and the Browns beat the tiebreaker over the Dolphins. So it
well, I
looks
mean,
like
I
it's gonna
think we
come
could
close.
do it. I think we could do it. I think that one's going to be the hardest one to do all season. But other
Yeah,
than that, the Dolphins they play the Broncos, Chargers, Jets.
Jets,
Well, they play the Chiefs,
Patriots.
and who knows? Maybe the Patriots put it together. Man, oh my God, they look so
Hopefully they go
bad.
on a 4 game losing streak at the end of the season. Come on, 4 game losing streak.
Well, I suppose a 5 game losing streak. 5 game losing streak.
Oh yeah. I forgot about the Eagles.
Gotta lose
Give
to
me
the
5 game.
Bengals.
Give me a
Yeah.
5 game losing streak.
I don't know. I don't see
Oh,
them
this is
losing
so
to the
stressful at the
Patriots.
Browns fan.
I don't see them losing to the Patriots, but I totally think they could lose to the Chiefs, Bills, and Raiders. And I'm going to take flack for it from Dolphins fans, but I think that the Bengals could beat them too. If the Bengals manage to put together a full game and play like they've been playing the last couple weeks, um, I'm just saying, don't count us out. Don't count us out. But
Man,
anyway,
you already know how I feel about it.
you're right. That's pretty much it for the prediction segment this week, though. So, like I said, Thomas is currently leading me 26 wins to 19 wins. um, this year.
Yep.
So
Oh, by the way, can we
not
can I talk about
insurmountable, but it's probably going to take more than 1 week for me to come back at this point. So what now, Thomas?
can I talk about one game that we didn't talk about? A lot of can we talk about that Monday Night Football game? The
Do we have to?
I just want to say this: the Jets should just start Joe Flacco for the rest of the season. I'm done.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I was actually talking to somebody about that yesterday.
He didn't even look that
Joe
bad, honestly.
Flacco gives you more of a chance to win than Sam Darnold does right now. It's just a fact. And is Joe Flacco perfect? No, he's not. There's issues. But man, he had that, Jets team almost beating the Patriots. Not that the Patriots are any good, but they're better than the Jets, and they're way better than the Jets, and the Jets almost beat them with Joe Flacco. So I say Jets, since you're probably going to move on from Darnold anyway, why not throw Joe Flacco in there? Because I think Joe Flacco is your best bet for winning right now.
Well, never mind. They don't want to win, do they?
Well, huh?
They don't want to win, do they? They're
They,
not going to win no
well,
games anyway.
I mean, nobody wants to go 0-16.
That's true.
I mean, it's like last year
That's
when the
true.
Bengals
Trust me,
were
you don't.
when the Bengals were in
Trust
the
me, you
middle
don't.
of yeah,
Trust me, you do not want to go 0-16.
when
Trust me.
the Bengals were in the middle of like clearly in like we were fighting for the number one draft pick last year. I was absolutely like, I want to lose key games and get this number one draft pick. But at the same time, I did not want to see them go 0-16. Like when we beat the Jets, it was just this sigh of relief. It's like, oh my God, we still got the number one pick, but at least we're not going to go 0-16. And then we beat you guys, and I was like, oh yes. It's not just this like
They're trying
disgustingly.
to get their coach fired, man. I believe the Browns trying to get their coach fired week 17 last week. They was like, all right, guys, let's lay
Yeah,
down and die. I think I only watched like I don't know how much of that game I watched because like they just like I just remember the second half of the game the Browns just pretty much giving up. Like that's all I remember from that game. You can see that they were giving up. They were like, man, fuck this guy, dude. Like we got Fat Forrest Gump on the sideline. We can't
you
like
know,
nah. This guy got to go. Like this.
I, I will say about the Patriots Jets game on Monday Night Football. It was definitely a clash between two very bad teams, but I don't know if I've ever been more entertained in my life between two just really bad teams. And I definitely did not expect to have such an entertaining game between the 2020 Adam Gase New York Jets and the eviscerated remains of the New England Patriots. Like, I
but
mean,
yeah, it's
we're talking about like a completely castrated version of the Patriots dynasty that that used to exist, and now it's just like the bloated corpse of it. And that team going up against a team that is somehow just maybe the worst team ever.
yeah.
Maybe the worst team ever. Maybe better, or maybe even worse than that 2016 Browns or 2017 Browns team. Um, that was they are and people talk about, oh, they're in a lot of their games, but you know what? So were the '08 Lions. So were the 2017 Browns. That doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
good. That doesn't mean that they're going to
Yeah.
win anything. If the Jets do go 0-16, I think that we could potentially put them as the pinnacle of just absolute worst team that's ever happened. And I was actually a lot of people talk about Adam Gase potentially being going down as one of the worst head coaches of all time, um, at least as far as his New York tenure is considered, and even as far as like seeming to have basically ruined Ryan Tannehill to the point that Ryan Tannehill got away from Gase and started being a top tier quarterback. Um, but a lot of people are talking about Adam Gase as maybe one of the worst head coaches of all time, if not the worst head coach of all time. And what's funny is another guy who gets talked about as one of the worst head coaches of all time is Rich Kotite, another Jets head coach. So I don't know who the hell they're hiring over in New York, but
Probably the same
it
people that's
seems like
hiring
they
coaches
can
in
never
Cleveland.
get something good. What?
Well, John Dorsey and the general manager for the uh the Giants. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
never mind. It's different teams. You're ready to say?
Yeah.
They're best friends, but I mean, like, it's different teams. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Well, anyway, I think that's I think
Leave
that
that
about
joke
wraps
alone.
it up for the predictions this week. Um,
Mhm.
we already wrapped it up, and then we can continue going on anyway. But that doesn't matter. This is why we're giving it its own episode. It takes a while and kind of drags down from the rest of the main podcast. So we're doing it on this now, giving it its own video. And if you like the content, please like and subscribe. You can find me on social media at Kyle Phelps92 on Twitter, Facebook.com/the Phelps. Find Thomas T_star 94 pretty much anywhere. And then blow down page on YouTube.
Yep.
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 So thanks for watching, everybody. Who day?
Go Browns.